Jolly good listen, what? The latest from our daily newsletter at podnews.net. In the UK, the Midas Summer 2022 survey has been published by Radar. It suggests a new high of 19% of adults listening to podcasts every week, for a total of 69 million hours, or if you like it better that way, 6.5 hours a week for every listener. Podcast listening is 58% male in the country, and peak time for podcast listening is around 9 in the morning. YouTube is rolling out enhanced advertising to podcast listeners. Advertisers will now be able to place up to 30-second audio spots and narrow their campaigns to specific podcast genres. YouTube's podcasts homepage is currently unavailable outside the US, though the company announced audio ads will be rolled out globally. Spotify has added free access to pod sites and Chartable for Megaphone customers in the UK, Germany, France, Italy and Spain. The company has also announced that Reach plc is the latest publisher to join Megaphone and the Spotify Audience Network. Michael Mignano, co-founder of Anchor, was interviewed by the University of Delaware ahead of a lecture he's giving on Friday. We link to that today. The Australian podcast ranker for September was released. SCA says Listener is number one. ARN says its iHeart Podcast Network is number one. The ranker doesn't measure the ABC, which is probably really number one. In India, a new brand of podcast microphones, Audio Array, has been launched. Grab the L&P and a chocolate fish and prepare your winning shows, because the New Zealand Podcast Awards now closes for entries this Thursday, October the 20th at 5 p.m. Meanwhile, the Latin Podcast Awards winners were announced, and Osher Gunsberg has been named Chair of Judges for the Australian Podcast Awards. And Spotify has decorated its New York office with statues of cats called Podcats. We're told that one of the cat statues wears goggles and holds a test tube which represents Spotify's podcasts on science. We presume there's also a hairless grumpy cat guarding a bottle of Warbringer Warmaster whiskey to represent Spotify's biggest signing, and a gap on the shelf where a nice eco-friendly cat once was, representing the now cancelled How to Save a Planet. In People News, Chris Colbert, Jay Green and Ariel Nissenblatt have been announced as new board members at the Podcast Academy, and Scott Hurd has joined Daily Wire as SVP of Ad Revenue. And in podcast news, is there a connection between mental illness and creativity? Gil Kruger's Mentally Gil, Conversations with Creators, speaks with YouTubers and other content creators about their experiences with mental illness. Con Juan is a new podcast out tomorrow about one of the biggest con men in the world. The hosts Daryl Brown and ex-Met detective Christian Plowman look at Con Juan's life, starting right from the beginning in 1993. Then they trail him across the globe until they eventually track him down and arrange a meeting at a casino in an undisclosed location. Will he turn up? And what if California left the United States? If it did, what would happen? Would it usher in a new era of peace and prosperity, or plunge the US into a new civil war? The Last Resort is new from Warner Music Group's in-house podcast network Interval Presents, and looks at Calexit, the campaign for Californian independence, and how the movement's founders became entangled in a global criminal conspiracy involving the FBI and Russian intelligence. It's new today. And that's the latest from our daily newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.